I'm marrying your best friend. I haven't filed my marriage with you, and there's no division of property.
Guess what? I got myself a high-earning banker husband.
In front of me, my husband and my best friend were laughing triumphantly. I was shocked to discover my husband was cheating, but even more so that it was with my best friend. He proposed to me only because I was selected as a housekeeper candidate. I sighed deeply and looked at them with pity. I guess they see me as a poor woman who just dumped me like a rag. You didn't know?
What's that?
I won't use sweet words like honey anymore. I decided to confront them with the truth. I'll make them understand that mocking others can bring major backlash. I'm Susan Anderson, 39 years old. 10 years ago, I met my banker husband, Dan, through a marriage agency, and he proposed to me. I was worried I wasn't his type, considering my plain looks. But Dan spoke kindly to me.
I looked inside your heart and decided to marry you. Marry me.
Moved by his words, I agreed to marry him. However, our marriage wasn't smooth sailing. Above all, Dan's mother didn't like me.
She's so plain.
She sighed during our first meeting. But Dan defended me.
Don't say that about the person I chose to marry.
So I tried my best to win over Dan's mother. Shortly before we started dating, Dan's father had passed away. Dan's mother complains, when Dan was depressed because his father was gone, she pushed him to marry her. Otherwise, he would have found a better girl. Seemingly unimpressed by my ordinary looks, she often spoke sarcastically. Watching TV, she'd say, "Such a cute girl. If only his father were still here. Oh well, Dan is just too kind, and that's why he was deceived." Yet, I kept ignoring her veiled insults. Dan was attentive and kind to me, and our marriage lasted for 10 years. One day, as Dan and I were shopping at an outlet mall, someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind.
Hey, there. Susan, right? Long time no see.
Hi, Kate. The woman waving in front of me was Kate, my best friend from middle school. Kate was always so lively and cute. We used to hang out a lot. However, her family moved away due to a job transfer, and we hadn't seen each other since. Feeling nostalgic, we went to a nearby cafe to catch up. Surprisingly, Kate still looked stunning, hardly near 40. She was working as an office worker. But it seems she hasn't been lucky in finding someone to marry.
Marriage is all about compatibility, isn't it? I just haven't found the right person yet.
Dan was staring at a smiling Kate as if he could bore holes through her.
I had no idea Susan had such a beautiful friend like you, Kate.
Thanks. What does your husband do?
He's a banker. As soon as she heard the word banker, I thought I saw a sparkle in Kate's eyes.
So, he's high earning, right? Susan, you've snagged yourself a great husband. I'd love to get closer.
Of course. Why don't you come over for tea sometime?
I'd love to catch up with you guys.
It felt like the conversation was steering in that direction, but maybe Dan was just trying to be friendly with my best friend. When she came over for tea, it turned out that Dan and Kate liked the same video game. They were thrilled and started playing together. From that day on, Kate started coming over often. Under the guise of playing games, she would stay for hours. And both Dan and Kate seemed to exclude me. When I was in the same room, they would ask me to run errands like buying snacks or cleaning the bathroom, clearly trying to keep me away.
Dan, you're so good at this game.
I'm honored to be complimented by Kate.
Kate seemed to be getting closer to Dan, and he was clearly smitten. My mother-in-law, who liked beautiful Kate, said,
Oh my gosh, she's a beautiful girl, unlike Susan.
She welcomed Kate warmly, and her treatment towards me became harsher. Since reuniting with Kate, I've felt increasingly alienated. Hey, aren't you getting a bit too close to Kate?
It's nothing like that. Don't be jealous just because you're plain.
Dan wouldn't listen to my concerns. Kate even started sending me messages.
If you're too controlling, your husband won't like you.
The more they enjoyed each other's company, the more tired I felt. Dan's behavior became increasingly odd. Recently, he bought a game that could be played online, probably encouraged by Kate, and played it every night after work. That in itself was fine, but his muttered complaints whenever he lost in the game.
Stupid kids think they can mess with adults. Beginners shouldn't drag me down. Damn it.
I hated hearing his rants. Even though they weren't directed at me, just hearing his negative outbursts was subtly stressful. He never lashed out at me or took his frustrations out on physical objects. Still, whenever Dan started his tirades, I'd escape to the next room and put on headphones to listen to music. It was a way to cope, but it was draining to deal with day after day. Why does Dan spend so many hours every day on such infuriating games? However, it seems he's in a good mood when Kate logs in and plays with him. I shouldn't mind my best friend getting along with my husband, but I felt uneasy inside. Additionally, a younger colleague at his bank starting to get recognition for landing big contracts seemed to be accelerating Dan's irritation. Whenever I heard Dan complaining about his bank, I would nod along and say, I see, that sounds tough. I'm not familiar with the banking profession, and any misguided advice could upset him.
Don't talk like you know it all.
But he wouldn't do the same for me. When I consulted him about a mistake I made,
Everyone is so useless.
he snorted disdainfully as if looking down on me. It seemed he had no intention of offering me comforting words. Feeling this, I focused on Dan and remained silent for a while. He looked uncomfortable and went to the bedroom. From then on, our relationship gradually worsened. He even began to criticize the meals I made for him.
Chowder and boiled vegetables again. I don't want to eat this country-style food.
Don't say that. You're already not getting enough vegetables as it is.
I don't want to eat old lady food. I'm going out to eat.
As the distance between us grew, so did Dan's frequency of contacting Kate. He seemed to be going out for tea with Kate often, and I found it unpleasant. Hey, are you going to see Kate again? You're married, you should think a little.
What's that supposed to mean? Are you imagining our suspicious relationship?
Trying to stop him only made his mood worse.
It's just game advice between friends, it's fine.
Kate said that, trying to reassure me, but my anxiety only grew inside. Dan remained arrogantly dismissive of my concerns. Somehow, he started speaking ill of others loud enough for people to hear. Once, we went to a diner for a limited-time steak special, and there was a father with 2 kids sitting next to us. The kids were genuinely adorable and friendly, greeting us with smiles, creating a warm atmosphere in the diner. While I was ordering, Dan seemed to be listening to the family next us and started mocking them to me.
Looks like he's a single father. Probably can't expect him to earn much.
Hey, what are you suddenly talking about?
Maybe his wife ran off. He still wears a ring, probably still hung up on her.
A meanness was evident on Dan's face. Was he always like this? You shouldn't say things like that so thoughtlessly. Everyone has their circumstances. It seemed that my quiet admonition angered him. Next, Dan turned to speak to the children.
Is your mom not around? That's sad.
The father smiled wryly in response.
She passed away last year due to illness. Sorry to bring up such a gloomy topic.
I thought she'd left him. It's boring. I'm getting out of here before his bad luck rubs off.
Normally, you'd apologize for leading the conversation in such a direction. I felt so embarrassed my face could have caught fire. How could he say such things? The wait staff had overheard the exchange, and I couldn't bear to stay any longer. After apologizing to the family, we left the restaurant as Dan wished. Fortunately, we had just ordered, so the food hadn't been made yet, and we could cancel it. When we got home, I confronted Dan. Why would you say something like that? Didn't you think that was rude?
But it's the truth. Are you on the side of such a poor father? Or are you having an affair with him?
I was shocked by Dan's outrageous accusation. He had never been like this before. I was beginning to lose any vision of a future living with Dan. And as if things couldn't get worse, my mother-in-law, Nancy, slipped on a riverbank during her walk and broke her leg. The surgery was successful, but she had to do her rehabilitation at home. I was supposed to take care of my mother-in-law, but she behaved inappropriately toward me, her caregiver.
Hurry up with the meal. You're such a slow, Susan.
Nancy, walking to the living room can also be part of your rehab.
Oh my, are you trying to make a frail old woman walk? What a monstrous.
Nancy was immovable and always complained to Dan about me, which led to me being scolded by him when he got home.
Hey, Mom can't move right now. Aren't you being heartless?
But the doctor said she needs to move or her legs will stiffen up.
I don't want excuses. Just remember, if anything happens to Mom, I won't forgive you.
Dan, who should be the one helping, did nothing. Honestly, taking care of his mother alone was a huge burden for me. Dan started staying away from home more, using work as an excuse, saying my exhausted appearance was depressing. Even when I talked to Kate about it.
You really need to take good care of Dan's mom. That's his wife's duty, right?
She said that, taking Dan's side. My mental stress kept building up. After 6 months, I had lost 44 pounds due to the stress of caring for my mother-in-law. Thanks to my care, my mother-in-law was able to walk a little around the neighborhood. I was originally a bit overweight, but I had quickly dropped below average. The weight loss wasn't intentional, and with the added stress and lack of sleep, I looked more gaunt than thin. One holiday, I looked in the mirror and realized I needed to do something about my miserable condition. After taking care of Nancy for 6 months, I lost 44 pounds. So, I need new clothes because mine don't fit anymore. Could you look after Nancy next Saturday while I go shopping?
You're always home. Any clothes should be fine. You're not planning to cheat while leaving Mom with me, right? You should be thanking her for your improved figure.
I was speechless. Despite caring for his mother and managing all the household chores for 2 months, He objected even to me spending just one day to buy new clothes and get my overgrown hair cut. What am I to him? Am I supposed to feel this miserable without a single word of sympathy? With that thought, tears began to well up, and I started crying. Dan looked thoroughly disgusted and offered no comfort.
Stop it. You're making me sick. I'm leaving now.
With that, he left the room. And then, unbelievably, he came back with Kate. Kate was hanging on Dan's arm, looking down at me. Their behavior was clearly not just friendly. Then Dan dropped a bombshell.
I'm marrying your best friend. I haven't filed my marriage with you. And there's no division of property.
Dan raised his chin with a triumphant look, and Kate,
That's right. I've snagged the high-earning banker husband.
she looked pleased with herself. I was shocked that Dan was cheating, but even more so that it was with Kate, who was supposed to be my best friend. Obviously, Kate had cozied up to Dan to snag the banker. Kate kept showering Dan with flattering words to win his favor.
Dan, you're so good at games. It's even cooler when you totally beat those selfish kids. With your background, nobody can talk down to you.
Encouraged by her flattery, Dan became even more arrogant. And while Dan was away, Kate would cook his favorite dishes, winning him over completely. I had been puzzled by Dan's recent change, but now it all made sense. What do you mean we haven't filed for marriage?
Well, honestly, I only lived with you to have someone take care of the house and my mom. If a good woman shows up, I can switch right away. I have no marriage history and no division of property in divorce.
Dan seemed amused by his own cunning.
I actually wanted to kick you out as soon as I met Kate, but then Mom's accident happened, and I let you stay. But since you've defied me this much, maybe it's time for you to leave.
You haven't registered your marriage, so we're a first marriage couple, and we don't have to waste money on you, like property division. Dan's really smart.
It turns out Dan never filed our marriage certificate after our wedding ceremony.
I'll handle the marriage registration.
I was foolish to believe his word. After an argument with me, Dan filed a marriage registration with Kate. Naturally, since he hadn't registered our marriage, they easily became husband and wife. Kate decided to quit her job because of her marriage to Dan. Dan, flaunting it, took out the marriage certificate he had filled out 10 years ago and tore it up in front of me. Kate, why did you betray me? We were best friends, right?
Oh, honestly, you were just a foil. Someone like Dan, with his high income, is too good for someone like you. It's hard to find good men through dating services.
It seems I deserved someone better after all. So, please leave. I'm starting a real married life now.
So, it was only me who thought we were best friends. A quiet laugh rose from the back of my throat.
Finally figured out the reality, right? So, what are you going to do? You hardly have any money. Are you going to become homeless or live in a hostel?
Oh, how pitiful. Well, it was an inappropriate marriage for you anyway.
I sighed deeply and looked at them with pity. You didn't know?
What's that?
I won't use such endearing terms as honey anymore. I decided to tell the two ecstatic people my truth. I have assets worth $1 million, so I don't need to worry about my livelihood.
Hey, it looks like you've finally lost your mind.
Dan burst out laughing, thinking it was just sour grapes. It's understandable, given what they thought of me up to now. I'm not crazy, And I knew you hadn't filed the marriage certificate.
What?
One day, while I was taking care of his mother and Dan wasn't around, I cleaned his room. Then, in the back of the closet, I found something like a wooden safe. It was an old model, and during cleaning, the lid opened, and I saw what was inside. The contents were a marriage certificate application with names filled in. Why would something like this be here? Hadn't it been submitted? It couldn't just be forgotten if it was secured like this. My mind was in turmoil. I couldn't confront Dan easily, and I didn't want to arouse suspicion, so I put the marriage certificate back where I found it. While I was figuring out Dan's intentions, I overheard him on a speakerphone call with his mother.
So, how are things going with her?
Yeah, I'll be getting rid of that wife soon.
Yay, you're smart. And to think she didn't realize the marriage wasn't filed. It's a good thing too, since our valuable assets won't go to such a wife.
I couldn't believe it. I had married Dan because I loved him, but he never intended to actually marry me.
Using taking care of mom as an excuse. Her hair's a mess, full of age spots, glasses, and no makeup. Honestly, her appearance has gotten even worse. She is not fit to be my wife.
Hearing those words from Dan chilled me to the bone. The voice coming from the speaker was too cold. This explained the mystery of the marriage certification found in the safe. I realized I was going to be discarded after being broken. With that thought, I bought a used computer and started improving my skills to become independent. While caring for his mother, I spent most of my time at home working on the computer. I bought programming books at the bookstore, read them thoroughly, and put them into practice. Soon, my desk was surrounded by books on programming languages. It seems I had a good affinity with computer programming languages like Java and C++, as I had progressed to developing apps. As I learned marketing techniques on social media and released several one-off games, they hit it off and started generating revenue. When I timely posted video tutorials on these games, ad revenue started rolling in too. Thanks to this, I began receiving programming contracts from companies. As my income exceeded the limits of a sole proprietorship, I formed a company under my name and managed the finances through it. App development doesn't stop at launch. They need maintenance and frequent updates, and handling these meticulously has been well received. Even while being heavily tasked by my mother-in-law, I had a goal and managed to persevere. I used online banking for managing my savings, so I rarely needed to visit the bank in person. I had requested the bank employees not to disclose my earnings to Dan, so he had no idea about the money I was making. I had enough money to leave this house and stand on my own. And half a year later, I faced the revelation about the unsubmitted marriage certificate from Dan. At this point, Dan was at a loss for words.
Geez, I didn't know about any of this.
I didn't tell you, but after how you've treated me, I can't consider your feelings anymore. Maybe I'll talk to the bank about pulling my money out all at once.
Wait. If you do that, I'll get in trouble.
Dan tried to plead with me, but my heart was no longer with him.
So, you hid the fact that you were making so much money to deceive me. I'll sue you.
It's so unfair that you have all that money. I was practically taking care of your husband, so give me my share.
Both seem to have lost all common sense with their audacious attitudes. Your jokes are too much. Also, Dan, you and I were strangers to begin with. Even if we were in a common law marriage, your actions are all written down in my diary, and I've recorded this conversation on my phone. You can't touch my assets. With that, I picked up my bags I had prepared in advance and left the house, ignoring their clamor behind me. Afterward, I received numerous phone calls from Dan, a mixture of cajoling and pleading.
Hey, you were trying to prove yourself to me, right? With that money, we could manage it more effectively together, right?
My best friend looked down on me.
Hey, since you're so plain, you tried hard. But give me $1 million as our wedding gift. I want this new designer bag.
And from my mother-in-law, constantly pressing me.
What do you mean you've been earning money? I didn't know a thing. Pay me $100,000 as compensation for your lies.
Listening to them was utterly exhausting. Please do the household chores yourself from now on. I won't assist you. According to you, I'm a woman who exploits men's weaknesses, so it's better if we cut ties, right?
What are you saying? Such a disrespectful, Susan.
I'm no longer your daughter-in-law, and I'm stopping my contributions to the household expenses. You'll just have to manage somehow. Good luck. During the time I cared for his mother, there were many expenses, but Dan hardly contributed. Life's standard would likely drop significantly without me. I wonder if his mother could endure that. Moreover, her recovery was not yet complete. Dan never even came to the hospital, so he probably doesn't know that his mother's muscle strength has declined considerably, and if she doesn't move enough, she could become bedridden. I encouraged her and persuaded her to walk as much as possible, but knowing her tendency to be lazy, Dan probably wouldn't bother, and Kate definitely won't help. Nancy needs to walk as much as possible. If she can't walk anymore, don't blame me.
Is that a threat? Thanks to you, Mom is good. Appreciate it.
I was mocked like this during the divorce. Dan probably thought it was just my sour grapes. I've given my warning, now it's none of my business. Later, Dan tried his hand at investing but apparently failed. I found out because he told me he needed $7,000 by 3 p.m. today for a margin call, or things would get really bad, and he asked me for a loan. After I firmly refused, he kept sending messages and calling.
Please, you have money, right? Help me out.
That's what happens when you invest without proper knowledge. My money isn't there to cover your blunders.
If you can make $1 million, I can too. There's no way I can turn.
It's astonishing how low he regarded me. I don't want to be mentally exhausted from any more involvement with Dan. I was determined to firmly reject Dan's demands as impossible.
At least lend me some money. I'll do it right this time.
No, there's no guarantee I'll get it back, and I don't want any more to do with you.
Don't be ridiculous. Acting all high and mighty just because you're Susan.
Frustrated by his yelling and emotional manipulation, I hung up in disbelief. I started recording part way through and consulted the police.
It's not uncommon for ex-spouses to be financially desperate and persistently involved. We'll step up patrols just in case.
He assured me of this, so I felt relieved for the time being. In terms of investments, not meeting a margin call leads to a forced liquidation. If the liquidation results in a deficit, it turns into debt. Sometimes, if the market continues to fall, it might be better to allow forced liquidation rather than meet the margin call. which would increase the debt if things worsen. If there's a chance the market will recover, it's better to meet the margin call, but Dan probably wouldn't understand that balance. If a forced liquidation isn't enough, it could turn into debt, though it might not. However, judging by his panic, I suspect he used money meant for essentials like living expenses. I also trade stocks with my savings, so I have some knowledge. Stock trading won't cause huge losses if you don't make strange purchases or sales. But attempting to make a quick fortune can turn into a gamble. Dan isn't the type to think long-term or see ahead. If I were still with him, I would have opposed and stopped him, but it's no longer my concern. A week later, considering cost reductions, I was thinking about buying a new car. However, when I logged into my online banking, it seemed like the balance was suspiciously low. Realizing something was clearly wrong, I headed to the bank. When I asked them to check my account at the counter, the staff rushed to the back. And soon, the branch manager appeared, looking flustered.
Susan, I'm terribly sorry, but upon verification,
The branch manager said, wiping sweat from his forehead, it appears that Dan has made unauthorized access to your online banking and transferred funds from your account to his own. Dan, having access to the account information, probably did this to cover his investment losses. He should know such actions would not go unpunished as a bank employee. The branch manager called Dan, who showed up with a sullen attitude.
Come on, that money is mine as your husband, right? The fact that you've been hiding it is what's really wrong. So I confiscated it. Any complaints?
You and I were never legally married. Don't start with convenient claims now. We're complete strangers. This is a crime of embezzlement of a customer's money.
What are you saying? Getting all high and mighty. Branch manager, don't listen to her. It was just alimony from the divorce.
The branch manager's angry voice echoed in the reception room.
what are you even saying? Don't you think that's outrageous?
What? Did I really do something that bad?
After Dan's egregious remarks towards me, a customer, the branch manager scolded him. Naturally, it couldn't be hidden any longer, and they had to call the police. That's when Dan finally began to panic.
The police. Why? I've been working hard for this bank.
You can't just do something like this and expect to get away with it.
The shouting continued in the reception room, and ultimately Dan was taken away by the police. Since Dan's assets couldn't cover the full amount, the bank agreed to cover part of the repayment. The incident was significant enough to be reported in the local newspaper, resulting in Dan losing his job. He had been respected in the neighborhood for his position as a banker, but now he was unable to stay at his home. With no money left, he moved to a cheap apartment while looking for a job. However, his name had been published in the newspaper, so any company that found the article turned him away.
If you had just kept quiet, by now I'd be rich. My career is ruined because of you.
I blocked his phone number, so now he sends endless resentful emails, which I ignore. Kate also keeps contacting me.
You're just making pointless trouble. Thanks to you, being a banker's wife is over. You're just looking down on us because we have no money.
I guess these peoples don't know the word deserved. Thankfully, the branch manager's sincere apology convinced me to continue banking with them. The fault lies with Dan, not the bank. I decided to forget about Dan and his group for a while and focus on my own work. I started investing the money I earned, and it appears to have gone well as it has now reached about $5 million. Work became too much for me to handle alone, so I began recruiting staff online. Soon, graduate students and skilled engineers started to join me. Among them was a single father I recognized. The same man Dan had once ridiculed at the diner. He had started engineering from home so he could take care of his children.
I'm still no substitute for their mother, but I don't want my children to feel deprived.
I apologized for Dan's past rudeness. He forgave me, saying that those words had spurred him on even more, but at the time, I was so embarrassed I could have died of shame. While busy managing my company, I unexpectedly ran into Dan as I was returning from a client meeting. He had changed so much that I didn't recognize him at first. He fell to his knees in the middle of the street when he saw me.
Susan? Is that you, Susan? Please, I need to talk.
Stop it, not here. Given the public setting, I agreed to listen to him inside a cafe near a police station. As it turned out, he was after money and a possible reconciliation. It seems Dan is having trouble even at his newly secured job. He couldn't escape his addiction to online gaming, which had led to his abusive language seeping into the real world. Despite my warnings, it had become a bad habit he couldn't break. Additionally, his daily meals were a disaster. Kate, obsessed with natural and authentic foods, turned out to be a devout follower of olive oil. She could only make greasy dishes with olive oil and cheese. Until now, what she had prepared were merely attractively arranged store-bought deli items. As a result, Dan had become obese and was covered in pimples. I heard that he had bad pimples when he ate greasy food, so I made him a healthy diet mainly of vegetables. Such high-fat meals are tough on older people like his mother and can lead straight to lifestyle diseases even in the young. Dan had become decidedly unhealthy. Kate, meanwhile, had been splurging and dining out excessively. Money was tight despite their efforts, and olive oil was no longer affordable. Kate started substituting salad oil and sesame oil, adding vinegar for health, which only led to bizarre taste changes. Kate, who had planned to enjoy a lavish lifestyle, was now completely distressed. Disgusted with her increasingly overweight middle-aged husband, she had an affair, but it was discovered by the cheating partner's wife, who demanded alimony. The financial strain meant Kate's in-laws were now in debt.
If you weren't gone, I could be enjoying a fun retirement by now. If only Susan had stayed, we'd be millionaires.
Kate faced daily sarcasm from her mother-in-law, and their marital relationship deteriorated. Kate's former beauty was nowhere to be seen. Despite his mother's potential to become more mobile with rehabilitation, her laziness worsened her immobility. After all her malice, did she really think she could expect financial help from me?
I can cook, and just looking at Kate's food makes my stomach shrink. My mom can't move. I have no money, and it feels like I'm being torn apart. Help me?
I do feel pity, but I can't forget being called a tasteless old lady when it came to my cooking. By the way, Kate's soup has a film of over 3 millimeters of oil on top of the soup, so the oil content seems pretty bad. No, I am neither a caregiver, a housekeeper, nor an ADM.
Then hire me at your company and make me an executive.
How shameless are you? I rejected Dan's pleading. Who would want to return to such a hell? Dan looked desperate.
Sure, I cheated, but it was just once. And if you round it down, that makes 0. So, I haven't cheated at all. Let's be husband and wife again. I'll dump her.
But obviously, someone who fakes submitting a marriage certificate speaks differently. I ignored Dan and left the cafe. Then, Dan started trembling and having convulsions. If I still cared about him, I might have panicked and called for an ambulance. But looking at him more coldly, I saw him saying it's painful, while sneakily glancing over at me. I was so appalled I couldn't say anything. When I walked outside, he hurried after me but retreated when I entered a police station. I had recorded our conversation just in case and sent it to Kate. He said let's be husband and wife again, but we were never married to begin with, and now your husband is contacting me.
What? That bastard. He's betraying me.
Despite her own infidelity, Kate was absurd in her own right. It seems the relationship between Kate and Dan, newlyweds, had quickly soured. I hired new security staff and deleted Dan and Kate's contact information. Now, thanks to stocks and investments, my company is operating smoothly without financial difficulty. The single father at my company seems to be managing well with his salary, covering his children's tuition and living expenses. Although I'm busy with work, I'm living a much more fulfilled life than when I was with Dan.
Susan, I need you to look at this program.
Okay, I'm coming. I put away the programming reference book that was worn out from overuse and headed to my employee's desk.